Amanda and I had 5 wonderful years of marriage. We had just bought our dream home in the suburbs and were planning to start a family soon. One day I returned from work to find divorce papers on the dining table, her signature already there. All her belongings were gone. No note, no explanation, no trace of where she had gone. Her phone was disconnected. Just like that, my seemingly perfect marriage crumbled before my eyes. I was left with nothing but questions. Before I begin my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. I first met Amanda at a company holiday party back in 2017. I was standing by the drink table making small talk with colleagues when she walked in. She worked in the marketing department, and I was in software engineering, so our paths rarely crossed during work hours. That night, something clicked between us. We talked until the venue staff started cleaning up around us. It truly was love at first sight, as cliché as that sounds. After 8 months of dating, I proposed during a weekend trip to Colorado. We had hiked up to a beautiful vista overlooking the mountains, and as the sun began to set, I dropped to one knee and asked her to spend her life with me. The smile on her face when she said yes is a memory I thought would sustain me forever. We had a small, intimate wedding with just our closest friends and family. Nothing fancy, just a heartfelt ceremony followed by dinner and dancing under the stars. Everyone commented on how perfect we were together, how our love seemed so genuine and deep. I believed it too. Our first home was a modest, 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. We spent weekends painting walls, planting a garden, and turning that house into our home. Every nail hammered, every plant watered, felt like we were building our future together. Career-wise, things were going well for both of us. My software engineering position was stable with good growth prospects, and Amanda was quickly climbing the ranks at her marketing firm. We were financially comfortable and able to save for our future goals. Some of my fondest memories were the simple moments we shared. Our 2-week trip through Europe, where we got lost in Venice and ended up having the most amazing dinner at a tiny restaurant no tourist would ever find. The Sunday mornings when we would cook breakfast together, dancing around the kitchen to old songs from the 60s. The way she would leave little notes in my lunch bag, just to say she loved me. All these small moments added up to what I thought was an unshakable foundation. We had so many plans. We wanted to have 2 children, hopefully starting within the next year. We were saving for a larger home in a better school district. We even had a retirement plan mapped out with dreams of traveling the world once our future kids were grown. Our life seemed charted on a clear and happy course. Looking back now, I should have noticed the subtle changes that began about 2 months before everything fell apart. Amanda grew quieter, more distant. Our evening conversations became shorter, often with her claiming exhaustion from work. I noticed she was working late more frequently, often not coming home until after I had already eaten dinner alone. Her phone became an extension of her hand. She was constantly checking it, and I noticed she would turn away slightly when responding to messages. When I asked who she was texting so much, she would smile and say it was work or her friends planning a surprise for someone. I believed her because I had no reason not to. Weekends changed, too. She started going out with her friends more often, sometimes for the entire day. Shopping trips that used to take 2 hours now consumed most of a Saturday. When she returned, the number of bags never seemed to match the time she had been gone. Despite these changes, I dismissed my concerns. I told myself she was just dealing with stress at work. Maybe she was planning something for our upcoming anniversary. I never imagined the truth would be so devastating. On what would become the most defining day of my life, I decided to leave work early. Our anniversary was coming up that weekend, and I wanted to surprise Amanda with a special dinner. I stopped by the grocery store to pick up ingredients for her favorite meal and a bouquet of lilies, her preferred flower. When I pulled into our driveway around 4 in the afternoon, I was surprised to see her car already there. My first thought was excitement that we would have extra time together before dinner. That feeling evaporated the moment I opened the front door. On our dining room table, centered perfectly on the polished wood surface, was a manila envelope. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Amanda. Her elegant signature stood out starkly against the sterile legal document, a final autograph on our marriage. My first instinct was to call her name to search the house for her to understand what cruel joke this might be. But as I moved from room to room, the truth became undeniable. Her closet was empty. The bathroom shelves cleared of her toiletries. The framed photos of her family were gone from the hallway wall. Even her favorite coffee mug was missing from the kitchen cabinet. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called her. The mechanical voice informing me that the number had been disconnected felt like a punch to my stomach. Text messages went undelivered. It was as if Amanda had not only left our marriage, but had erased her entire existence from my life in one calculated sweep. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of disbelief and desperate attempts to locate Amanda. I called her parents, first certain they would know something. The confusion and concern in her mother's voice seemed genuine when she said she had no idea what was happening. Her father promised to try reaching her through other family members, but my hope was fading with each passing hour. Next, I contacted her closest friends. Some did not answer my calls, which immediately raised my suspicions. Those who did speak with me claimed ignorance, but their voices carried a hesitation that told me they knew more than they were saying. After 2 days with no word, I went to the police station to file a missing person report. The officer listened patiently to my story, before explaining that since Amanda had left divorce papers, it was clear she had left voluntarily. There was no crime to investigate. The sympathetic look in his eyes as he suggested I contact a divorce attorney only deepened my humiliation. Desperate for answers, I hired a private investigator, a former police detective named Jack, who specialized in finding people who did not want to be found. He was direct and unsentimental, which I appreciated in my emotional state. He took details about Amanda, copies of photos, and a retainer fee that made my bank account wince. Within 3 days, Jack discovered Amanda had methodically erased her digital footprint. Her social media accounts had all been deactivated or deleted entirely. Her LinkedIn profile was gone. Even her email address bounced back messages. It was as if she had been preparing for this disappearance for some time, carefully cutting ties that could lead back to her. As the investigation continued, more disturbing facts emerged. Jack uncovered that Amanda had opened a separate bank account 6 months earlier. Small transfers from our joint account had been feeding this secret fund, never large enough to trigger my attention, but substantial over time. 2 weeks before she left, she had withdrawn nearly $40,000 from our savings account, leaving just enough that I might not immediately notice during my regular monthly budget review. The most shocking discovery came when Jack found rental paperwork for an apartment in Seattle, 3 states away from our home in Denver. The lease had been signed under the name Amanda Wilson, using her maiden name rather than our shared surname. The lease had begun a month before she disappeared, meaning she had secured her escape route well in advance. But the final blow came when Jack uncovered email communications between Amanda and someone named Daniel Parker. The messages dated back nearly 8 months and grew increasingly intimate over time. There were plans discussed, declarations of love, and explicit details of their relationship that shattered any remaining illusion I had about our marriage. I remember sitting in my kitchen reading printouts of these exchanges, feeling like I was reading about strangers. How could the woman who had kissed me goodbye that final morning be the same person writing these messages? How could she have looked into my eyes for months while carrying on this deception? The emotional impact was devastating. I stopped going to work, using all my accumulated sick days, and then taking a leave of absence. When those ran out, I barely ate. Sleep came only when exhaustion overtook anxiety, usually in the early hours of the morning on the living room couch, because our bed felt too empty, too accusing. Friends tried to help. They brought food, offered company, suggested therapy. I rebuffed most attempts, preferring to sink into isolation. My parents called daily, their worry evident even across the phone line. But I could not bear their sympathy or the inevitable questions. I found temporary solace in alcohol, not in bars or with company, but alone in my house, with bottles of whiskey that promised a few hours of numbness. It was a dangerous path, and I recognized it even as I traveled down it. But the alternative was feeling the full force of my pain. The consequences of my downward spiral eventually caught up to me at work. After returning from leave, I missed deadlines, snapped at coworkers, and made careless errors in my code. My team lead, Jordan, who had been a friend since college, pulled me aside after I yelled at an intern for asking a simple question. "This is not you, Dylan," he said, his face etched with concern. "I understand you are going through hell, but I have to give you an official warning. The next incident goes in your permanent record." That warning was the wake-up call I needed. The prospect of losing my career on top of my marriage forced me to confront how far I had fallen. That night, I poured the remaining alcohol down the drain and called a therapist, whose number Jordan had given me. 2 months after Amanda's disappearance, Jack called with news. He had tracked her to Portland, not Seattle, as the rental agreement had suggested. The Seattle apartment had been a red herring, paid for, but never occupied. In Portland, she was living with Daniel Parker, in an upscale apartment near the Pearl District. Jack included photographs as proof images of Amanda and a tall, dark-haired man entering a building, shopping at a farmer's market, dining at a restaurant. They looked happy, comfortable, established, like they had been together for years rather than months. Jack had also uncovered more about Daniel. He was a marketing executive who had met Amanda at a conference a year earlier. They had maintained contact through work channels initially, their affair developing slowly but deliberately. He was divorced, wealthy, and had no children. In many ways, he represented a different life path than the one Amanda and I had chosen, one with more luxury and fewer responsibilities. The most painful discovery was a series of text messages Jack had somehow obtained. In them, Amanda and Daniel discussed their plans, including how and when she would leave me. They had calculated the timing to minimize complications, waiting until Daniel's position at his company was secure enough to support them both if needed. There was even a discussion about whether she should take certain items from our home, with Daniel advising her to leave behind anything that might complicate their fresh start. Reading those cold, calculating exchanges broke something inside me. The last lingering hope that there had been some misunderstanding, some external force that had driven Amanda away, vanished. I was forced to accept that my wife had not been kidnapped, coerced, or confused. She had chosen to destroy our marriage with meticulous planning and complete disregard for the pain it would cause. With that realization came a strange clarity. I contacted a divorce attorney, signed the papers Amanda had left, and had them delivered to her new address through legal channels. I stopped looking at the investigation updates, told Jack to send his final invoice, and began the process of disentangling my life from hers. Recovery did not come quickly or easily, but it did come. The first step was acknowledging I needed help. I joined a support group for people going through divorce, something I had initially dismissed as too touchy-feely for my taste. Sitting in a circle of chairs in a church basement, listening to strangers share stories of betrayal and resilience, I found unexpected comfort. Some had experienced even worse betrayals than mine, yet they were still standing, still fighting to rebuild their lives. I returned to the gym, a place I had neglected during the happy years of marriage. Physical exertion became a healthy outlet for the anger and hurt that still surfaced unexpectedly. The discipline required to increase my weights each week gave structure to days that otherwise felt shapeless. My therapist suggested I reconnect with old hobbies, so I dusted off my guitar and joined a casual weekend band of other amateur musicians. We were terrible at first, but the laughter and camaraderie during practices became something I looked forward to each week. Professionally, I threw myself into a new project at work, an innovative software solution for healthcare providers. The challenge of learning new technologies and the satisfaction of creating something beneficial helped rebuild my confidence and sense of purpose. When friends suggested I try dating again, I reluctantly created a profile on an app. The first few dates were awkward disasters, my conversation skills rusty, and my heart not truly open to new connections. But the practice of meeting new people, of presenting myself as a single man rather than half of a couple, was valuable, even when no second date followed. 8 months after Amanda walked out of my life, I arrived home from work to find her sitting on the steps of my porch. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. She looked different than in the investigator's photos, thinner with dark circles under her eyes. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face devoid of makeup. When she saw me approach, she stood quickly, nervously, smoothing her hands over her jeans. "Dylan," she said, my name coming out like a plea. "Can we talk?" I felt a storm of emotions: shock, lingering, love, anger, curiosity, and a deep wariness. Part of me wanted to walk past her into the house, lock the door, and pretend this encounter never happened. But another part needed answers only she could provide. 5 minutes, I said, unlocking the door and gesturing for her to enter the house that had once been ours. Inside, Amanda seemed disoriented, looking around at the changes I had made. The living room furniture was different. The wall color changed from her preferred beige to a deeper blue. All traces of our shared life had been systematically removed during my healing process. "You redecorated," she said softly. I restarted. I corrected. "Why are you here, Amanda?" The story spilled out between sobs. Daniel, her perfect new partner, had not been what he seemed. After 3 months of playing house, he had begun to show controlling tendencies, monitoring her spending and questioning her whereabouts. When she confronted him, he revealed he had accumulated significant debt that he had hidden from her. The final straw came when she discovered he had been using her identity to open new credit accounts. "He took the money I brought from our savings," she admitted, staring at her hands. "When I threatened to leave, he became scary, threatening. I had to sneak out when he was on a business trip. I have been staying with a coworker for the past few weeks, trying to figure out what to do." As she spoke, I noticed she was fidgeting with her bare ring finger, a nervous habit from our marriage. "I made the biggest mistake of my life, Dylan. I threw away something precious for a fantasy that turned into a nightmare. I know I have no right to ask, but I am hoping there might be a chance for us to try again. I still love you. I never stopped loving you." In a movie, this would be the moment of tearful reconciliation. The wronged husband would gather his repentant wife in his arms, forgiveness flowing easily in the name of true love. But real life is messier, and trust, once shattered, is not easily restored. "Amanda," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "what exactly are you hoping for here?" "A second chance," she whispered, "to come home, to rebuild what I destroyed. I know it would take time to earn your trust again, but we had something special. 5 years of love and memories. That has to count for something." I felt the pull of our history, the comfort of familiarity. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine taking her back, returning to the life we had planned. But then I remembered the calculated way she had abandoned our marriage, the months of deception before her departure, and the complete silence afterward. My friends had strong opinions when I told them about Amanda's return. My best friend Ryan was blunt. "She is only back because her upgrade turned out to be a downgrade." My sister Lisa warned me that taking Amanda back would show her she could treat me like a backup plan. Even my therapist, who was careful never to tell me what decisions to make, reminded me to consider what patterns might repeat if the underlying issues were never resolved. Despite these warnings, I found myself responding to Amanda's texts and calls in the weeks that followed. She was persistent, sending messages about our shared memories, updating me on her search for a new apartment, even sending food delivery to my office with my favorite lunch order. One evening she arrived unannounced with photo albums from our relationship. Another day it was a USB drive with songs that had been meaningful in our relationship. The gestures were calculated to tap into nostalgia, to remind me of happier times before the betrayal. It was working to an extent. I found myself thinking about her throughout the day, wondering if people could change, if relationships could heal from even the deepest wounds. I agreed to meet her for coffee one rainy Saturday afternoon, telling myself it was just to gain closure. The coffee shop was neutral territory, a place we had never visited together during our marriage. Amanda arrived early already, seated with 2 cups when I walked in. She had taken care with her appearance this time, wearing a blue dress. I had always liked her hair and makeup done in the understated way I had once found so attractive. "I ordered your usual," she said, pushing a cup toward me. "Dark, roast 1 sugar." The fact that she remembered such details both touched and troubled me. It highlighted the contradiction at the heart of our situation. How could someone know me so intimately yet betray me so completely? We made small talk for a few minutes, discussing mutual acquaintances and changes in the neighborhood. Then Amanda reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of touching mine. "There's something else I need to tell you," she said, her voice barely audible above the coffee shop ambient noise. "Something important." The revelation that followed struck me speechless. Amanda was 3 months pregnant with Daniel's child. She had discovered her pregnancy shortly after leaving him, adding another layer of complication to her situation. "I am not asking you to raise another man's child," she said quickly, seeing my expression. "But I wanted to be completely honest with you. No more secrets." As she continued talking, outlining how we could work around this complication, possibly with her parents taking the baby, while we rebuilt our relationship, I had a moment of startling clarity. The woman sitting across from me was still thinking primarily about her own needs, her own comfort, her own future. Even in her moment of apparent honesty, she was manipulating the situation to serve her interests. "Amanda," I interrupted her mid-sentence. "Stop." She looked at me, startled by my firm tone. "I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it," I continued. "What you did to our marriage was not a mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a series of deliberate choices made over months. You lied to me daily. You planned your exit meticulously. You took our shared resources. You disappeared without a word, leaving me to wonder if you were even alive." Her eyes filled with tears, but I pressed on my voice, low but unwavering. "I have spent months rebuilding my life, learning to trust again, finding value in myself as an individual rather than as half of a couple. I am not willing to throw away that progress. You deserve a chance at happiness, and so does your child. But that future will not include me as your husband, or that child's father." "But Dylan," she protested, "people make mistakes. They grow and change. The love we had was real for me," I acknowledged. "But it was conditional for you. When something you thought was better came along, you discarded our vows, our plans, our life together. That is not a foundation we can rebuild on." I placed money on the table for the untouched coffee and stood. "I wish you healing and peace, Amanda. I hope you find what you are looking for. But I have already found what I need, and it is a life where I am valued and respected." Walking away from that coffee shop was one of the hardest and most liberating moments of my life. Each step felt like breaking another link in the chain that had bound me to a past that no longer served me. By the time I reached my car, I was crying, but also smiling through the tears, recognizing the milestone for what it was. The practical aspects of moving forward came next. I sold our house, unable to fully reclaim it as solely mine, with so many memories embedded in its walls. The real estate market had improved, since our purchase allowing me to make a modest profit that became the down payment on a modern apartment in a vibrant downtown district, completely different from the suburban setting Amanda and I had chosen. My new home reflected my evolving identity. Clean lines, open space artwork. I had selected myself, rather than compromised on. It became my sanctuary and a physical representation of my fresh start. The emotional work continued in parallel. I maintained my therapy sessions, gradually reducing their frequency as I developed stronger coping mechanisms. The support group became less about processing my divorce and more about supporting newer members just beginning their journeys. My experience serving as proof that survival and thriving were possible. My volunteer work at a local coding academy for underprivileged youth gave purpose to my weekends and perspective on my own struggles. Teaching teenagers to build their first websites or applications reconnected me with the joy and wonder that had drawn me to technology in the first place. Through a community cleanup event, I met Sophie, an environmental engineer, with a quick wit and genuine compassion. Our relationship developed slowly, friendship blossoming into romance only after months of getting to know each other. Unlike the whirlwind beginning with Amanda, this connection was built on a foundation of honesty and clear communication. When I finally shared the full story of my marriage with Sophie, her response cemented my feelings for her. Instead of offering platitudes or speaking badly of Amanda, she simply said, "Thank you for trusting me with your pain. It has shaped you, but it does not define you." The contrast between my past and present became most clear when Sophie and I had our first disagreement. Rather than retreating into passive-aggressive silence or saying what she thought I wanted to hear, she directly addressed the issue. We talked through our different perspectives, found compromise, and emerged stronger. It was a revelation that conflict did not have to mean threat when built on mutual respect. I occasionally heard updates about Amanda through mutual connections. She had the baby, a little girl, and moved back to her hometown to be near her parents. She eventually found work at a local marketing agency, and according to common friends, seemed to be finding her way as a single mother. I wished her well from a distance. Our paths now permanently diverged. The most profound lesson from my journey was not about marriage betrayal or even recovery. It was about the power of personal boundaries and self-respect. I learned that loving someone does not mean accepting treatment that diminishes your worth, that forgiveness does not require reconciliation, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both yourself and the person who hurt you is to release them from roles they are not equipped to fulfill. I also discovered that true strength is not found in never falling, but in how you choose to rise. Every day that I chose dignity over bitterness, growth over stagnation, and possibility over regret, was a day I reclaimed power over my own story. Today, my life bears little resemblance to the future I once planned with Amanda, but it is rich with meaning and authentic connections. I have learned to hold relationships lightly enough to honor free will, while valuing them deeply enough to nurture their growth. Most importantly, I have learned that we are all the authors of our own lives, free to begin new chapters, when the previous narrative no longer serves our highest good. Sometimes when I reflect on the painful unraveling of my marriage and the surprising joy I have found, since I am reminded that the most difficult endings often precede the most beautiful beginnings. Not because fate has a plan, but because adversity clears away our illusions and leaves us with the clarity to build something real and lasting. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between reconciliation and starting fresh? What helped you know which path was right for you? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming life's unexpected challenges. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message of hope after heartbreak, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to honor yourself.